Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to come and speak to you. I was really pleased to accept because I think we've got a really good news story that I would like to share, and I hope you'll find it useful. So what I thought I'd do is just basically tell you our story and tell you it in kind of 3 sections. So a little bit about who we are, because I'm aware many of you may not know anything about us. A bit about our story, and then I thought it might be useful for you if I just talked a little bit about what we learnt. So my final kind of slide is about what lessons did we take away from all of this, which I hope will be helpful for those of you that are sort of at the beginning of this journey. So this is our logo, and this is our shop. So for anybody who's ever been to Dunbar in East Lothian, we're a coastal town. We have a lovely high street, big open high street, and we're really lucky that we have a huge number of independent shops. In fact, we don't really have any chain stores at all in the town, and I think that's quite unusual nowadays. We also have a kind of a tradition now of community-owned enterprises. So we have a community bakery which was started 10 years ago when the last bakery was about to close. We have a community garden off the back of the high street. We've got another community garden down at the local hospital. So it is a town that has a community and has a population that has a real commitment to wanting to live like that. And I think that was a fantastic foundation for starting all of this. So in terms of our journey, these slides were ones that we used at our first AGM, which we had 3 weeks ago. So I've kind of cobbled together a bit from that. And I won't go through all the detail, but I thought it might help just to remind me of what our story was. So the shop, the Crunchy Carrot, was started 20 years ago on the 1st of April, it'll be, this just coming up. And my first encounter with the Crunchy Carrot was when I went in with my son, who is now 20, and at the time was a baby being weaned, and I needed fruit and veg. And I went into the shop, and I was so excited about the fact that there was a proper fruit and veg shop in the high street again. And since then, it has been an absolute pivotal part of my family's life. So when I found out that there was a possibility that the shop might not be there anymore, that was why I wanted to get involved. And I tell you that because I think one of the lessons that I'll come on to later is that you need to really understand why you're doing this, because it's going to be really hard, and there'll be points where you think, why have I got involved? And I think if you can remember why you're doing it, it really helps. It certainly helped me. So what happened was basically the owners had done this for 20 years, and it had been a fantastically successful shop, had become a pivotal part of the community, but they wanted to retire. But they didn't want the shop to shut. They wanted the shop to still be there, and the community wanted it to be there. So they were fantastic in terms of saying, we're not going to just put the shop on the open market. We will hold on in the hope that the community can come up with a way of keeping this there. So they basically put out feelers to a few people, friends, I guess, and customers in the shop to say, how could we do this? And a small group of people, Helen, who's here today, who is now one of the JobShare shop managers, Joe and Chris, who were 2 of the 3 owners, and a couple of other people as well, who basically got involved and said, right, what do we do about this? How can we make it happen? And that's when they reached out to all the fantastic support that you've got here today in terms of the people who know how to make this happen. We then formed into a group. We got the help to work out what kind of organisation should we be. So we ended up saying, well, we'll be a community benefit society. So there was a lot of thinking went through getting to that point. And we had a session a bit like this. So this is us about 2 years ago with representatives from the bodies who are here doing a kind of workshop exercise with us to say, right, how do you turn this idea into a thing that's really going to happen? And that was when I think it sort of started to feel, oh, this is a bit real, actually. This might actually happen. So we then decided, this was the point at which I got involved. So what happened to me was I was in the shop one day, and Joe, who was one of the owners, said to me, oh, you're a finance person. We could really do with some help crunching some numbers for all of this. You know, it won't take much time. And I was like, okay, right, yeah, fine. It did take a lot of time, but I'm still enormously glad that I got involved. And we basically brought on other people as well. We brought on a representative of a supplier, and we brought in somebody who had really good sort of PR and marketing skills and lots of development engagement. So just kind of augmented the group to make sure we had the skills that we needed. So we then decided we were going to apply to the Scottish Land Fund. So at that point, there was a lot of really intensive hard work. So, for example, the first thing I said when they said, will you get involved was, well, I will, but I'm an accountant, so I said, I need to see the numbers. So I want you all around my house at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and we're going to do cash flow forecasting, and we're going to do a risk register, and we're going to do all that boring stuff that we need to do to make sure this is actually going to work. And amazingly, everybody decided that that was okay. I did have to do a bit of bribing with some cake and various other things, but yeah, there was a lot of slog like that, basically. And that stuff isn't very fun or interesting or exciting, but it's really important. So eventually, we put together a business plan. We'd worked through all the numbers. We put together a business plan that said, this is how we think this could work. And we put in the application. And we also did a lot of marketing. So here we are in the shop with our carrots. We did a lot of this kind of stuff, basically, trying to spread the word, trying to do it in a fun and engaging way, trying to get people hooked into what we were doing. This was some photographs that we had done for the share prospectus. So we put together quite a nice looking booklet for people that told the story of what we wanted to do. We were also developing a website to put all the stuff on there as well. And we did just a lot of that kind of thing. Put together this prospectus. And we then found out that we had got Scottish Land Fund funding, which was an amazing day, absolutely fantastic, really, really exciting. However, we still needed to raise a significant amount of money through shares. So in a way, this kind of ramped everything up quite a lot. So we launched our shares offer in June 2019. And the way we did that was by putting together this brochure, but by having a party. So what we did was we had a fabulous party in the parish church hall. I can't remember, Toby, were you at the party? Yeah. It was just a joyous day. There were so many people there. We had the local choir singing. We had people talking about why they were there. And people just signed up on the day, bought loads of shares, got really, really engaged. And this is the microphone there. That's Chris and Joe, the existing owners, thanking everybody for all the stuff that happened so far. These are all the people that basically just wanted to be part of this. So by then we'd created this great buzz, this fantastic buzz about this thing that could happen. And we'd kind of, to an extent, we were a bit like ducks with our feet under the water. So at the launch party, it all looked like this is great and it's all seamless and fantastic. And what we kind of protected everybody from was all the stuff that was happening behind the scenes. So the thing that Chris was talking about those, cold December meetings and the working through the slog and the, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And what if this doesn't work and all that stuff. So the two things were happening at the same time. There was the really hard graft, and then there was creating the buzz, basically, to share the vision and get people really on board with the story. So we had the launch party, launched the shares, and we had needed £37,000. And within, less than a month, we'd got £50,000. And then we had £60,000, and we were just overwhelmed. And one of the issues about that was the administration of all those shares was huge. So we hadn't really anticipated how much admin there was going to be in keeping a database of all the people that were asking for shares, reconciling the money coming into the bank, issuing the share certificates, just all those practical things that were happening. Issues about confidentiality around people buying shares, because we were really conscious that in a small community, people needed to be able to invest in this, knowing that their friends and neighbours would not know how much money they'd put in, or indeed that they had put money in at all. And that was a really important thing for us. So we had to work out the practicalities of who's going to maintain the database, how are we going to share the information, how is that all going to be kept confidential so that people can have that confidence. And one of our board did a sterling job. She had really excellent IT skills. She put together this great database, and she and I then sat and reconciled the bank one night. And then we had a great evening where we went to one of the board members' houses and we put share certificates in envelopes for an entire evening. And we sent out 500 share certificates. So there was all that stuff going on. So eventually we had more money than we needed, really, but certainly enough to go ahead. So we then appointed a solicitor and we worked with them to buy the shop. That in itself was quite a challenging process. Those of you that ever bought a house or a property of any sort will know that it always happens at the last moment. The solicitor is always doing it on the day, and this was no exception. Despite all our efforts of putting in place everything we thought needed to be there, it was still the morning of the day we were supposed to conclude when we got the Scottish Land Fund money in the bank. And it was about 3:30 that day when the solicitor phoned us and said, we are going to be able to conclude today. So that was a pretty exciting day. One of the bits of learning for me about that was I had not realised that I would not be able to do an online banking transfer of the money. So I got to a point at 3 o'clock that day where I thought, oh my God, I can't actually transfer the money. What am I going to do? And I literally ran up the road to the branch of the bank that is in the high street and said, I need to put through this payment for over £100,000 and I need to do it right now. But it all happened. It happened. And the sense of relief and jubilation. We were in my house that day when the solicitor phoned. Sorry, I'm being given a warning. Right, okay, so we did a bit of refurbishment in the shop. These are the staff on the day that we reopened, having become a community business. And we since then have kind of gone on from strength to strength. This was the 1st of November we took over, and we've been trading now for, 5 months nearly. In terms of what we bought £113,000 worth of assets. So it was the shop, it was the fixtures and fittings, the stock, and the goodwill in the business. And the way we paid for it was with £85,000 of Scottish Land Fund grant, and in the end £65,630 worth of share income. And the shares continue to come in. We still sell shares, we're still open for anybody to buy shares. Lots of people bought shares as gifts, which is something that you might want to think about. And it was something we encouraged. We kind of said to people, why not buy them for somebody for a birthday? Or we had a lot of people bought shares who didn't even live in the country, who'd maybe been on holiday, or they bought them for relatives, or all kinds of things. And again, that was about spreading the idea that our community had really long tentacles. And there were lots of people who felt a connection to that community and really kind of tapping into all of that. We also got some other Scottish Land Fund grants. We have a development officer who is working for a year with us to look at things like how do we join up with other community activities in the town, how do we look at the sustainability of our business, because a lot of the ethos of the Crunchy Carrot was about the environmental and sustainable issues, trying to minimise packaging, trying to use local suppliers. So we're looking at how can we increase all of that, looking at can we get an electric vehicle for the shop, for example. And the development officer's role is also to try and find funding to keep their post going. So we hope that they'll be able to stay in perpetuity, but we need them to get the funding to do that. We also got a little bit of refurbishment money as well, which was enormously helpful to allow us to just do a few things to the shop that the owners had wanted to do for a long time, but it was an opportunity to do that. What did we learn? I mentioned the share vision. I think that really does matter a lot, and I think it is also part of the second point that I've got on there about the teamwork. So one of the things that I have so been encouraged by throughout all of this is we never fell out, and there would have been so much scope to fall out. There were points where it got really tricky, but we didn't, because we all really believed in what we were doing, and we got some of the other stuff in place so that we had ways of navigating the difficult stuff. Governance was a key part of that. So early on we realised that there were going to be conflicts of interest. So we had people involved in this who had various personal interests in it. Because of the nature of doing a community thing, people maybe work in the shop, or have some kind, they supply the shop, or they have some connection. So you've got to have really good, transparent, clear governance to navigate those tricky things. Communication, I mentioned again, we were so blessed in having Hannah, who is now our development officer, who is fantastic at just doing the kind of Facebook posts and bits of PR that set exactly the right tone in terms of getting that engagement in a really positive way, but telling people what they need to know. The detail really matters. I think my experience of having been involved in these things before sometimes is that people love talking about the big ideas and what it's going to look like and how great it's going to be. But the stuff that you need to get right is the detail of, but who's going to operate the bank account? And what kind of till do we need? And where are we going to get the scales from? And what about the fact that that fridge isn't working anymore? It's those kind of things that really need sorting. And it's the stuff that's not very interesting, and the stuff that it's sometimes quite difficult to get people to step forward and say, I'll do that. But it really matters. And it's the things that will undo you. Because if like the share issue stuff, if we got all that money in for those shares, but then we couldn't actually send out the certificates or record the data or all those kind of things. And then the final point is it takes time and energy. There were times when we were all exhausted, and it has taken a huge amount of time, but it was absolutely worth it. And now when we see the feedback that we got at the AGM a couple of weeks ago was just brilliant. We had one lady stand up and say that she remembered going in the fruit and veg shop, because the site that we're on had actually been a fruit and veg shop for longer than the 20 years. And she remembered going in 50 years ago and how pleased she was to still be able to go into a fruit and veg shop there. So I would encourage you to absolutely go for it. And the other thing I think is you need to keep yourselves going by celebrating the successes. So this was us having a board dinner after the 1st of November when we had gone live. And for the first, we had sat round tables many evenings talking about all of this stuff. And for the first time, we went out for dinner and drank quite a lot of wine and just gave ourselves a bit of a pat on the back. And I think that is really important as well. You have to find the joy in all of this to keep you going. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. And I'm very happy to answer questions or stick around for the day. So, okay.